All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, it took plenty of posturing and going back and forth on the matter, but the Southeastern Conference is finally ready to incorporate 9 conference games into their slate for college football. The announcement was made yesterday as the SEC has finally decided to get with the times and have 9 conference games. In my opinion, okay, it makes too much sense for the SEC to not have 9 games. Okay, I really can't believe that one of college football's premier leagues hasn't gotten on board with this until this date. The SEC, and I've said this before, the SEC is a 16-team league, and therefore, how can you justify not playing 9 games, especially when the Big Ten and Big 12 already do it? And in the case of the Big 12, they were a 10-team league at one point, and they had 9 conference games. You go back to the original Pac 12, the Pac 12 had 9 conference games, and the Pac 12 had 9 conference games, even going back to when they were the Pac 10. Okay, so you look at this for the SEC, and what does adding a ninth game mean for them? Well, plain and simple, it is going to help to strengthen the schedules of their schools that are going to be vying to try to get to that college football playoff. That's first and foremost. An additional conference game also helps the SEC to maintain some of their key football rivalries. Now, schools are going to have 3 annual opponents, while the other 6 are going to be rotated. And I think that is very important there because there was a lot of posturing and pondering as far as how do you continue to keep certain games on the slate. And I mean, things have been twisted around as it is recently for the SEC. You think about it, Florida and Tennessee do play each other for an example this year, but instead of it being at the beginning of the season or in the month of September at least, now it's pushed back much later in the season. You think about how between the hedges has been twisted around in recent years between Georgia and Auburn, another historic rivalry for this league. And we could just keep going right down the list. But nonetheless, I think this helps from that dynamic as well. So the SEC is going to 9. The Big 10 and Big 12 are already there. So, what does the SEC going to 9 mean for the Atlantic Coast Conference? Well, as of right now, ACC Conference Commissioner Jim Phillips does not feel the need and is not preparing for his lead to go from 8 to 9 as of yet. But don't get me wrong, at some point I do expect the ACC to follow suit because they're really not going to have much of a choice. I mean, the biggest holdup for me with the ACC with this 17-team league is the fact that, you know what, you could sit back and say, well, hey, the SEC wasn't doing it. Well, the SEC is there now. The Big 12 is there. The Big 10 is there. And if you want to try to keep up with these guys, you're going to have to do that. And it's one of those where you already know that the Big 10 and the SEC are going to try to control things, and they're going to try to get as many bids as possible for the college football playoff. So we saw the Big 12 get 1 last year. We saw the ACC get 2. But I guarantee you, by the ACC having 1 less conference game, that's going to hurt them. I really do feel maybe not this year, but at some point down the road, it's really going to come back to haunt them when it comes as far as getting bids to the postseason. And when it's all said and done, I think that might just twist their arm in order to get it done. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, there needs to be more semblance of order in college football, and I think this is going to help to start that. I've said this before. Okay, the power conferences all should be playing 9 conference games. Okay, while they also have another game with another school from a power league, and of course the SEC is basically doing that already. It looks like we're getting closer to possibly an SEC versus Big Ten challenge. Um, on the gridiron. Don't get me wrong, some of the ACC schools already play SEC powers. You think about Clemson facing South Carolina, you think about Florida and Florida State, just to name a few. Okay. And of course, in the case of Clemson, they're going to play a couple of SEC powers this year. They begin their season next weekend with LSU. Like I talked about, they got the South Carolina game. You got Georgia, Georgia Tech. But nonetheless, I think this is going to push the envelope more for more of the big boys to play each other, especially when it comes to that strength of schedule and getting to the college football playoff. So, with this all said and done, and with the SEC adding another conference game, what is that going to mean for the FCS schools and non-power leagues? Why? Because this is one less opportunity for them to go and travel to take on an SEC foe and get that paycheck. And of course, in some cases, especially for the FCS schools, okay, them traveling to take on one of these power schools, especially from a power conference like the SEC, that paycheck could result in them being able to fund not only their football program for the year, but in some cases, their entire athletic program. So, this is going to be one less opportunity for them to go out there and get some of that money. So, those schools are going to have to get a little bit more creative. And again, it's one of those, I keep talking about this, the gap between the haves and have nots in the world of college football is going to continue to increase. You look at the Southeastern Conference, plain and simple, they're looking to keep up with the Big Ten. And these are two leagues that are looking to corner the market, if you will, when it comes to college football. But again, I think this comes down to a strength of schedule. The SEC was not thrilled, okay, that they got three teams into the college football playoff last year. They really felt, and this is just my opinion, that they felt that they should have got a fourth. Some people feel that they were cool with three, or they did deserve another one, but the SEC doesn't see it like that, especially when the Big Ten got four. So I think this is going to be their way to strengthen things, and this is going to be another way for them to say, hey, you know what? There's a possibility that we're going to see a three-loss SEC team in the college football playoff because they're going to sit back and talk about strength of schedule. Gumbercules 420 Combo 69. I love that handle first and foremost. You're saying, yep, big and meaning Big Ten and SEC trying to become the AFC, NFC, and they couldn't care less about the rest. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, it's dog eat dog out there, and it's one of those where, unlike it is at the pro ranks, these colleges, they can really care, or at what about schools that are coming from other leagues. For them, it's all about taking care of themselves. And in this case, if you're the SEC, you've got to take care of the 16 teams in your league. It's one of those where they're going to look at that strength of schedule. They're going to try to beef that up to help their causes as far as getting to the college football playoff. Another thing for me, wouldn't be surprising if ABC, ESPN had a hand in this. And the reason why I'm saying it is this: you think about it, they gave the SEC all of that money last year to leave CBS and come over and work with them exclusively. So when it's all said and done, if you're ABC, ESPN, you would much rather televise a game between Texas A&M taking on Georgia as compared to Georgia taking on a Tennessee Chattanooga. And we can go right down the list for so many teams from that league because this is going to open up more marketable games for them. You think about it right now, going into this new college football season, Texas A&M, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, LSU, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama are all ranked. Okay, that's more than half of the conference from the SEC. And just like it was for so many years on CBS when they got the premier game for the SEC and they were able to market, basically getting a showdown between two ranked opponents every week in that 3:30 slot. ABC, ESPN wants that same thing. They want to have as many games as possible with ranked opponents, as many premier games on their league, on their network rather. And I think, incorporating this, I think this adds to that. You're just saying, I just wish the other fans would stop pretending the sport is still about the pageantry and realize they're trying to become NFL light. Well, I'll see what you're saying and I'll raise you one because I think in some cases, some of the folks in college football that are running it behind the scenes, they can care less about the NFL and they want to be bigger than the NFL. Just, uh, just my 2 cents. Honestly, as far as the pageantry goes, the pageantry, in my opinion, only still matters to the people who like their traditions have not been destroyed. Because I mean, you think about how many traditions have been destroyed along the way when it comes to collegiate athletics, as far as chasing a big payday. You know, I don't know how old you are, okay, but I can tell you personally, I'm old enough to remember, for an example, when Nebraska and Oklahoma were both in the Big Eight conference, okay, and that game meant something, every single year, the Friday after Thanksgiving. The same thing with Nebraska, Colorado. We can go right down the list as far as like rivalries that have been destroyed by realignment. And of course, there are some that have been destroyed in the recent upheaval by realignment. But if you're the SEC, now you have an opportunity, to showcase Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, Alabama, Tennessee. And that's the big thing because there was a possibility that I know that when Nick Saban was still the head coach at Alabama, he was really lobbying to try to keep, Alabama, Tennessee at that third week of October because that third Saturday of October carries with it a lot of tradition. Like I talked about earlier, Florida, Tennessee has typically been in the month of September. That's gotten pushed around. The same thing with Georgia and Auburn, and we can go right down the list. They're trying to protect as much as possible for their respective league, but nonetheless, I think, and I don't think people understand how big that the SEC adding this ninth conference game is going to mean for them, and it's going to mean for college football. And like I said before, the ACC is going to have no choice at this point. They got to try to keep up with the Joneses in more ways than one because you hear the rumors as far as stuff going on behind the scenes. North Carolina basically having a handshake agreement with the SEC, trying to keep Clemson and Florida State and so many others happy. So if you're the ACC, you need to get on board with this because I truly do think an additional conference game would mean more money, would generate more interest for your league, and you are trying to keep up with the Joneses. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, he's no dummy. Okay, he has one of the biggest and most important jobs in collegiate athletics, and of course, first and foremost, your job as a conference commissioner is to bring in as much money as possible for your members, and of course, in this case, you want to lobby for as many of your schools to try to get to the playoff. And like I said before, the SEC was not thrilled at the fact that they got three bids for the college football playoff last year. The Big Ten got four. And of course, the SEC did not play in the national championship game once again. That doesn't sit well with that with the folks that represent that region. But nonetheless, it was a long time coming. It's finally here. The SEC is going to 9 games. And like I said before, this is going to force the hand of the ACC to follow suit. I cannot say this enough. You cannot be a 16-team league and only play 8 conference games. It makes zero sense whatsoever. The SEC is finally caught up with the times. This is going to help them as they lobby to get more schools into the college football playoff. And I guarantee you, you're probably going to see some upset people outside of the SEC. Why? Because I think this is only going to pave the way for us to have a 3-loss SEC team get to the college football playoff. Just my 2 cents, but that's the way how I see it going down. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard on this podcast, you know what to do. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Gumbercules, okay? I didn't look at it clearly the first time around. Please forgive me. I definitely appreciate you chiming in. Definitely appreciate the support. And please do not be a stranger to this channel, especially right now as the college football season is beginning to get revved up. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports. And if you give me that follow, I will give you the follow in return. And the same goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you're on the act, pardon me, I said that already. Please forgive me having a senior moment there. But nonetheless, also, if you're on Facebook, okay, you can check us out at the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and I'm saying take care. And thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.